like to reconvene the Board of County Commissioners meeting. The time is approximately 1:30 in the afternoon. Today is March 22nd. At this time, I'd like to ask the board for acceptance of approved publication.
So moved.
A motion and a second by Constantine. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. The rules of public hearing. Our staff will present each item for consideration with staff's recommendations. The board will have an opportunity to ask questions when staff presentation is finished. The applicant will be then have given the opportunity for their presentation, and the board will also be able to ask questions at the end of their presentation. Members of the public interested in speaking either for or against the project or issue, excuse me, please fill out the yellow speaker form located in the lobby. Indicate the item, whether you're for or against it, and place it in the tray in the lobby, or please give it to Shaney that's in front of us. Members of the public will be allowed to comment on once per item. If you'd like to have your comments submitted for the record, please fill out the green form that's located in the lobby. And again, please either put it in the tray or give it to Shaney. Speakers should state their name and address clearly for the record, and whether for or against it. Speakers will be given 3 minutes unless they are an official spokesperson of an HOA or an organization. Then they'll be given 6 minutes. Board members who have questions regarding the speaker's comments will have an opportunity once the speaker's time has expired. Speakers should limit their comments pertinent to the information regarded on the agenda. The clerk is required to retain all documents, photos, drawings, and anything that's presented to us so we can keep a clear public participation document. Once you show it to us, be prepared to leave it with the clerk. Once all the speakers are heard, the applicant will be given the opportunity to rebut if necessary. Once we close the public hearing, the matter will be in the hands of the Commission for discussion, recommendation, and/or motion. Following a motion and a second, the board discussion, a vote will be taken. Commissioners who do not cast an objecting vote will be considered in voting in support of the motion. For quasi-judicial public hearings, which we do have one, will be following the Florida law requires that the board discussion for quasi-judicial hearings be supported by competent substantial evidence presented to the board during the hearing on the application. Completion of substantial evidence is such evidence that is reasonable in mind and would be acceptable and adequately support the conclusion. There must be a factual basis of the record to support the opinion and testimony for both experts and non-expert witnesses. People presenting testimony may or may not rely on factual information that they presented to the Board of County Commissioners. Again, if you present any written information or photographs, will be required to be left with the clerk. Has anyone received any quasi-judicial ex parte communication? Okay. Thank you. At this time, we'll go to the first agenda item, which is item number 31. We'll hear from staff.
Good afternoon. Joy Giles, Senior Planner for the Planning and Development Division. At this time, staff would like to request a continuance of this item to the April 12th BCC meeting.
Is there a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
A motion is second. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak about the continuance, or the continuance only? Commissioner Constantine?
Since it's my district, I checked the area and everything. Is there, why?
Yes, so Public Works has requested the continuance. They would like to further evaluate the
Good.
comparison between the sketch and description provided and the pavement on the ground.
And during my discussion with the staff over the agenda, that's one of the things that I asked. So good. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak about the continuance? Seeing no one, close public input. Any other discussion from the board? Was the motion time specific, or was just to
The
continue?
12th.
April
April
12th.
12th, okay, just want to make sure. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion passes. Thank you. We'll now move on to item number 32.
This is reasonable.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. Item 32 is a request for proposed amendments to Chapter 40, Building and Construction of the Seminole County Code to replace the well contracting representative on the county's contracting licensing board with a licensed contractor of any discipline, and to delete Article 1 and Article 2 related to wells and pumping of Part 8 of Chapter 40. These changes are due to changes in Florida statutes, which transfer the authority for well permitting from local jurisdictions to the state of Florida water management districts. Staff recommends that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed ordinance amending Chapter 40, Building and Construction of the Seminole County Code. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Before we go to the board, Shani, are there any written requests?
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak to the board on this issue? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, we'll close public input. Board's direction. Commissioner Zimbauer.
I move a motion to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 40, Building and Construction of Seminole County Code, amending Part 2, Contractor Licensing, amending Section 40.16 generally to replace the well drilling contractor representative with a licensed contractor of any discipline, amending Part 8, Wells and Pumps, by deleting Article 1 generally and Article 2, Permits and Inspections in their entirety.
Second and question.
Mr. Constantine.
Thank you. I just want to know, since this sometimes evolves as a different district, and there might be a position open, and this board doesn't meet very often. In fact, I don't think it's met at all in the last 3 or 4 years. Whose appointment is it? Does anybody know?
I don't, but I can look into that and find out.
And that's all I would ask.
Yeah.
Whose appointment is it? And so we can get it appointed, even though they don't meet.
I believe it was mine, but I'll verify.
You have
what?
all of
You
them.
have them all.
No, it's not
I'm just
yours.
saying.
You get all of them.
Okay. Any other discussion, particularly to the item of the motion at hand?
No, but after we vote, I'd like to add something, if I may.
Absolutely. Seeing no other discussion, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Lockhart?
Yeah, something that I had a discussion with one of my appointees to the Contractors Licensing Board is that they found that there might be value in having them meet a minimum requirement of annually as a board, even if they don't have specific business before them, to at least go over what their roles and responsibilities are, if there have been updates in state statute over that period of time, maybe even talk a little bit about sunshine law. Some of them don't, some of them don't even know who else they are serving with on the board because they don't meet. And if and when they do have to come together, to not have ever laid eyes on any of your colleagues until that flashpoint might not be terribly healthy. So that would just be one recommendation,
Okay.
if we want to look at that, maybe.
Sure, we can do that.
If there's no objection, can we have, just to make sure our attorney and staff look at that together? And if we need to amend the code, to at least meet once a year. Is any objection to that?
No, I
No.
think that's great. And maybe we ought to contemplate that for all of our boards.
Let us have staff and the attorneys look at it and report back.
Sounds like a great idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Good suggestion, Commissioner.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. That concludes the public input and the public meeting. So now we'll go to the county manager's report. We'll go to the county manager's report.
I have nothing.
Okay. County attorney's report?
No report at this time.
Okay. We'll go to commissioner's report, District 4.
Yesterday was a great opportunity to participate in the 4-H annual thank you. The 4-Hers in Seminole County get together, and they have a thank you for all of the folks who support them throughout the year. And it was great to see students and adult volunteers and everybody yesterday at the Extension office. So shout out to Seminole County 4-H and all the great things that they do. Also got to talk a little bit with some of our staff out there and share with them how much we appreciate the things that the Extension office, including those with 4-H and University of Florida IFAS, that they do, that we really have no idea the services that they offer and the value that they bring to citizens in our community. So it might be a great, I see Rick is gone this afternoon, but I'd love to have a update from them publicly to share, not only with us, but for the general public, all of the offerings that are there through that program. It'd be something I'd love to see at some point. Also had an opportunity to, I don't have my report in front of me, so I'm doing this from memory, because this afternoon went by way faster than I think anybody has ever seen us go through an afternoon. Tomorrow, I'll be representing you all at the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness. There are some interesting updates regarding federal funding that we need to keep a really close eye on with that organization. It's also Homeless Services Network, so when you see HSN, there's a marriage between the Central Florida Commission on Homelessness and Homeless Services Network. The funding that they have been relying on for quite some time to serve families is going away, and there are some monies from the Bezos Foundation that they'll be able to use to continue to serve families, but we're going to have to back local governments or others in some way, shape, or form. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to backfill some of these federal funds that are disappearing to serve our individuals. So have that, please, on your radar as folks come to talk about distribution of ARPA funds. That's going to make a significant impact in our homeless community. Forgive me, I'm going to look at my phone and look at my calendar to remind me of the things that I was going to say in my district report. If that doesn't bother you all, who's next?
Commissioner, if you wouldn't mind, we just...
I'd be
go to the
happy
next one
to.
and come back.
That'd be great.
Okay.
District 3?
Thank you very much, and I don't have much today. I just want all of you to know that the public hearing on the Big and Little Econochahatchee Basin happened on March 9th, and there was a pretty robust crowd out there at the Canterbury Retreat, and I know that that's something that has not been done for a long time and is going to be coming back eventually for us to take a look at. We did have the Central Florida Expressway Authority today in all their report and everything, so not just the 414, but also the expressway with the airport. There is, things that are happening, I think all of you are aware of, but those are the two things that affect us directly on that. The Seminole County Historical Society did a night with the Notorious Nine that Commissioner Zimbauer and I were at, and I thought that was just a novel idea and really a lot of fun to see these actors participate in being the one of the various individuals that have made Seminole County's history colorful. I think that's the best way to put it, and it was quite, I hope, quite a successful event for dollars.
Well attended.
Well attended, and it was also going to be, for the buggies. The dollars were going to the buggies. Also attended event for the Florida House at former Congressman Micah's house, which was also well attended, and all of you that have ever been to Washington know that that is a very worthwhile event and worthwhile program to have the Florida House there at the nation's capital. I was able to attend the Regional Planning Council's meeting at the Brevard Zoo, and I've got to tell you, that's quite a regional asset. And they do work with our zoo quite a bit, but this has been a really nationally renowned park. They're also putting in a water park and aquarium that they're paying for themselves, just like this is all part of a self-funded program. The one thing I got to tell you, because any of you that have ever watched Meerkat World, they have a lot of meerkats. Thank you. They got a lot of meerkats there, and
Commissioner Lockhart, thank you for that translation.
Meerkat, thank you, meerkat, yeah, meerkats, quite a thing. I'll also tell you an event that the I was able to attend and speak at the Lifeboat Project for Human Trafficking that happened at the Amway Center, and it was quite an event that raised a great deal of money for that organization that is very prominent here in Seminole County. And coming up, there is we all know about, maybe Commissioner Zimbauer, you might want to say a little bit more about the farm tour that's coming up this next week. And something that's happening in my district will be the Springs Concert, which all of you know and approved last meeting. And I don't have to tell any of you what a wonderful event that is. And with that, I am through.
Thank you. Commissioner, District 2.
Thank you very much. First order on mine, I would like to make a nomination to Catherine Townsend for the Code Enforcement Board, effective at once for a term of 3 years.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
Secondly, if you could put up on the projector there, I want to thank the World Mission Society Church of God. This was in my district this past weekend. They spent a day going through the 426 corridor and picking up mountains of trash through my district, and I sincerely appreciate those volunteers coming out and picking up all the roadside debris and trash. So that was a great event, as you can see, well attended by those folks from the church. So thank them very much. Commissioner Constantine talked about the Notorious 9 Historical Society, so I won't go into that. Also spoke about the Econ Basin study. The only thing I'll add to that is Commissioner Constantine probably knows this is something that's way past due. Way past due. This is something that even as a private citizen 20 years back I was advocating for, and the funds just weren't there to do it, and I'm glad to see that Seminole County is finally, not only in the Econ Basin, but all the drainage basins through Seminole County. So that's going to be great work. Thank you, Mr. Dredge, for helping accommodate that and getting all that done for the future of our county. Also, zoo updates. We have a new CEO that's been hired that starts in April. Also, keep on your radar that this is a time of year where the TDC is going to meet, make determinations where funding will go. I suspect the zoo will be coming forth next month to make a request, as they typically do. Myself, and I think Commissioner Lockhart, and I want to speak for her, met with the Coalition Against Larger Trucks or Bigger Trucks, CABT. Not a whole lot there going on other than I think this is going to be a federally mandated issue as well as a state issue, but basically it has to do with, larger trucks than what are permissible now on secondary roadways, et cetera, and the possibility of raising what's called the bridge weights on interstate highways. So that'll be a legislative type issue that I don't know that we here locally can dictate other than our own roadways. Also, Sanford Airport update. Everything is going well. There is a new flight that Allegiant is going to be flying now to Las Vegas, and as you know, they are flying to Key West, $49. Not a bad deal to get to Las Vegas. Flight coming in and out and passenger count is still below the 2019 level, although it's slightly inching up, and I suspect as we get more carriers in, we'll be in a better position. We've also landed another charter that'll be coming from the Spain area, which has been a long time coming since the COVID pandemic. I'm also my office is looking for a replacement of the Seminole County Historical Commission. If anybody knows a person that can attend 3 p.m. meetings, please let my office know if somebody may have an interest in that. I'd be happy to appoint those individuals. Some of the trouble we're having is, of course, the time slot, finding somebody that's capable. So it's usually somebody that's retired or somebody that's not working. So if you have something, please let my office know. Next thing is put on, just for staff and my fellow commission, we've been talking a lot about our master plan with our water issues. It's come to my attention that Parkstone HOA now is going to be awarded a cup of over 1 million gallons a day, This is a cup that existed for the city of Winter Springs, which the city of Winter Springs has decided they no longer want. I think this would be wise for us to look at and make a determination whether we want to include this in our long-term water strategy. I'm happy to get with staff and let them know St. John's Water Management is involved. But basically, there's over 1 million gallons a day just coming up out of the ground and running through a culvert into a settling pond and into Lake Jessup at this point, all good, clean, potable water. So we should investigate that cup.
Can you stop right there, Commissioner?
Yes.
I'd like to ask Mr. Abel, what do you think the appropriate next steps would be?
I will get with staff and have them get in touch with the commissioner and get the information that he has and then be able to work that forward.
Right. When Terry, this all came about, Mr. Abel, Terry was aware of it. It was on his radar when it first started coming to fruition, and now St. John's has worked their way down to the point where they're going to award the cup to the HOA for many reasons, but I can get with your staff and so forth offline to help everybody get in the right direction. Okay. The next thing that I'd like to bring up for some discussion, as many of you are aware, there was a criminal event that occurred in the city of Sanford where there were 14 dogs that were recovered and we had to take in that were abused and not well cared for. And I want to thank our animal services people for taking those dogs in and doing what's necessary to hopefully get them rehabilitated and either find them in a good way back with their owners or find new owners for them. With that said, I'm concerned that in looking at our ordinance, which I understand we're updating some portions of that, which will come back for us before, is the registration requirement and the lack of registration that we're actually doing in this county under the ordinance is that we're somewhere around maybe 20% compliance. And it's easy for many people not to understand because the veterinarians may not be telling people they have to register their pets and so forth. In this immediate case, as well as a case that we had during the pandemic, if y'all remember, it was in my district when the unfortunate pit bull attacked the smaller dog at a commercial enterprise when somebody went to visit their business and the adjoining dog next door got out, attacked the woman and the dog in my district. None of these dogs were ever registered. This poses a problem, in my opinion, for law enforcement, not knowing what they may encounter when they go to a certain address. We have a company that has been doing this for Brevard County, doing a pet registry, which takes no time of their staff, and I would like to ask staff to consider looking into that and let us know if that's something that may be beneficial or not. If there's no cost to us, it's not going to cost us any additional staff time. I think we should either amend the ordinance where we don't require registry, or we actually enforce the registry itself, for what it's worth. With that said, my final issue is the AHAC. The AHAC met this past week, and we are finalizing the affordable, the local housing assistant plan renewal that's due in May of 2022. To give you some numbers along those lines in the SHIP program, Seminole County for fiscal year 2022-23 is on slate for $4.919935 through the SHIP program. So I will tell you that the AHAC committee is a very good committee. I've been on that committee as a private citizen and now as a commissioner, as well as when I was in planning and zoning. I would say that this group is probably, bar none, one of the best that's ever been put together, and they're really focused on the affordable housing aspect. So we appreciate that very much, and we also want to thank the county attorney's office for some of the opinions related to waiving of impact fees, as well as infrastructure dollars that may be able to use for these purposes for affordable housing. With that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. District 5?
With regard to the animal ordinance, I have been working fairly aggressively, as you all know, since I got here with regard to that. And there is something in there that will talk about the number of animals that one home has and a different type of registration so that there can be inspections. And so there, some of what you described will be covered by that. The compliance is still an issue. With regard to the larger trucks, I would point out that and I think I talked about this earlier, but I am going to be bringing back a request to put no truck signs on some of the roads in my district, and we've had this discussion before, but we continue to say that we want to wait until the 46 traffic dies down, post-construction, et cetera, and as we're starting to think about larger trucks and all the rest of this, we still have areas in my district that I believe are less safe than they could be because we have trucks using, I now know they're collector roads, but they are local roads with residents that live on them, and it's just dicey. So I would like to ask for approval to appoint Michelle Simoneau to the Sanford Community Redevelopment Agency Board. She will be filling a position, it's position 1 on the board that was left vacant by the unfortunate passing of Paul Osborne. And for those of you that aren't connecting the dots on the names, this is the owner of the Colonial Room.
I believe there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passed unanimously. Commissioner?
The last thing is I would like to ask for your approval to do a resolution of appreciation for Steve Coover for his service as the attorney for the Seminole County Port Authority. He's been doing it for a very long time, and he's certainly not charging market rate, so we're going to see a difference there. And his service has just been impeccable.
Second.
The motion is second. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion passes.
That's it.
District 4?
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. Trucks are just a hot topic of conversation all the way around, and so what I'd like to do, if there's consensus among the board, is invite Alex Miller as the president and CEO of the Florida Trucking Association to come and present when it's a convenient time for us and for them. There's a lot of opinions up on this board, but it would be great to have someone who's an expert in the field and the president and CEO of that statewide organization to come and present to us.
If there's no objection, we'll reach out to him and see when his schedule will be conducive to ours.
That's great. That'd be fantastic. Tee It Up Together is a first time ever joint fundraiser, golfing fundraiser between the Foundation for Seminole County Public Schools and the Foundation for Seminole State College. Both organizations every year do a golf fundraiser, and both organizations sell a ton of foursomes. Both organizations run the risk of rainouts, which has seemed to happen intermittently. They both serve the same purpose and have very interlocking and adjoining missions, and they have decided, which I just love because it's putting egos aside and working together for what's best for our community, they've decided to do a Tee It Up Together fundraiser, both foundations together at Topgolf in Lake Mary. It's going to be April 4th. We are very excited. We've already figured out all of the nuts and bolts of how those funds will be distributed equitably between the two organizations, but it's going to be a lot of fun, and it's really going to be able to involve a lot of people and include folks who maybe aren't serious golfers, who maybe have shied away before from being a part of a foursome at one of our fabulous golf courses in Seminole County, but this will be a great opportunity for all sorts of folks to come together, and those bays are starting to sell out. So if you are interested in supporting not just one, but both of the education foundations in Seminole County, we would love to have you check it out. Tee It Up Together. It's April 4th. It's a Monday from noon until 5. We also wanted to give an update on the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council Executive Director search. The Executive Committee did hire Tara McHugh as our new, Tara has been an employee of the Planning Council for 19 years. She is a Seminole County resident. She is just absolutely a delight, and if you have not had an opportunity yet to meet her, I would recommend having your staff set up a time that you can have a meet and greet with her. She is just delightful and really interested in a collaborative approach to all of the things that we deal with regionally and all of the other organizations that tend to have great crossover goals and purposes. So congratulations to Tara, and I know we're all going to look forward to meeting her, working with her. Also, the Planning Council hosted a business resiliency workshop that was held via Zoom. There were lots of folks that joined in real time, but it was also recorded. So if you have any businesses in your district, or if there are any business folks out there who want to either hear for the first time or maybe get a brush up on how to plan for the unfortunate event of either a natural disaster or a man-made disaster or things that we just can't predict these days that might be happening, we know that we need to get our businesses up and running in our communities as quickly as possible when there are tragedies. So it was, and thank you to Alan Harris, who was one of the panelists for that. It was actually hosted by Seminole County. We were partnered with the Planning Council to put that on. So look for that Zoom link on the Planning Council's website. And I don't know if we have it on our website. If we don't, we should. Maybe check on that, and let's share that with our business community. Also, last thing, talking about small businesses, there is a new sushi eatery in Longwood called Masse, and it was absolutely wonderful to be with a young family that is following their dream of opening up a restaurant in our community, and they chose Longwood. And I also want to give Longwood a shout out. They do something that I don't know if any of our other cities do. I don't know that we do this. In fact, I'm pretty sure we don't. But when a new business comes to the city, to their clerk's office to pay their business tax receipt, they offer them the opportunity to have a ribbon cutting. And the city actually coordinates it and hosts it, and the clerk of the city of Longwood actually goes and gets the balloons and brings the scissors and the ribbon. And it's just a wonderful perk for small businesses that are wanting to open up in our community to have these ribbon cuttings and get a little free press. So not everyone is a member of a chamber, and so this is a great little thing that they do. So shout out to Longwood for doing that for their small businesses. And that is my report.
Thank you. Under District 1, 2 quick items. First, this Saturday will be the Taste of Oviedo, which is March 26th. It officially opens up at 10 a.m. It'll be held at the Oviedo Mall. Please attend if you are able to. And then I've been getting quite a bit of emails about solid waste, and I didn't know if the county manager would be able to shed some light on it, either now or in the future. I would like for us to get an update so that we can understand exactly what's happening.
I can bring you a formal update, or I can tell you where we are right now.
Either way, it's up to you.
I had a meeting with the residential haulers yesterday afternoon, and we're making progress moving forward with that. I'll be following up some conversations with the interlocal agreements with the cities, and then we'll be having some further conversation with the commercial haulers in the coming next couple of weeks. Everybody's experiencing very similar challenges, getting equipment, getting staff, keeping staff, and we're just trying to work through that right now to see how we can all work together in partnership to get to the same place at the end of the day, which is getting everybody's trash picked up.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mr.
Could
Chair.
I?
Yes, Commissioner Constantine and Commissioner Lockhart.
I think, and thank you for that. I've been following, as you know, because I think Commissioner Lockhart and I are sharing a lot of phone calls from constituents. And as you know, there's different, it's primarily in that southwestern area. And in one sense, it's the waste management has certain problems, and then Waste Pro has the different problems. So I do know that you had a meeting yesterday at 3 o'clock, I believe, with them, and you with Shaquille. And I just, I think that it's important that we keep ongoing updates on that, because I've been getting 5 to 10 phone calls a day. And you learn very quickly that you can do a lot of things good and a lot of things bad, but if the garbage isn't picked up on time, people get upset.
Yeah, yeah.
Commissioner Lockhart?
So you're right. It's the haulers, but it is also us. We have our challenges. And in talking with Tim Dolan from Waste Pro, one of the things that he was very adamant that we needed to do, because we're in partnership together, it's picking up the trash, is that we need to start paying more, because we can't get employees. They've raised their rates on their end. He shared with me what they're paying because they saw the crisis coming and experienced the crisis. And then in our partnership, on the other end of that, when they get those, you okay?
Wrong pipe.
Okay. When the trash is actually picked up by a hauler, who's now being paid significantly more, we don't necessarily have the employee at the transfer station to help move that trash along. And one of the significant factors that someone from the private sector in their area of expertise has shared with me is, frankly, we don't pay enough and we need to fix it soon. In fact, we needed to fix it yesterday. So I think it's wonderful that we're saying we're addressing the problem, but we really need to address the problem in the manner in which we've been told it needs to be fixed.
Okay. My goal is to bring it up, make sure that we're actually hearing what the process is, and I believe you'll be updating us as we move forward, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's all that matters.
Part of that should include how many vacancies we've had over the period of time, because it is playing into the situation. We're diverting the trucks because we can't move the stuff.
Correct.
Okay, at the last meeting, I did talk about some upcoming work sessions. I just want to hand that out, as well as, so on one sheet, there is the Land Development Code, and we'll do a work session on April 19th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., as shown on that sheet. And then the following one will be on June 14th. We'll have in the morning from 9:30 to 12, a regular BCC meeting, and from 12:30 till 5 will be the ERA Visioning Retreat. Want to make sure that that's on everyone's schedule. If there's any issues, please let us know, and we'll try to adjust. Is that okay?
Sure.
Just wanted to make sure. And I got one more thing. Okay. About a month or so ago, we talked about CM at risk, and I want to make sure that everyone's been updated on that. I know we spoke about that, and I know not everyone was updated about a week or so ago, and I'm hoping that everybody's been updated about it
Yes.
and didn't know what direction the board wanted to go on with CM at risk. Since we've all been, I feel as if you're renovating an existing facility, CM at risk is the right way to do it. I'm talking about the courthouse. I don't believe it's too late to do that, and I believe that will help future items from not coming up. So CM at risk, when you talk about renovation, I think is the appropriate way of doing it. Commissioner Zimbauer?
I don't disagree at all. It's my understanding that this may be, because of a time constraint, from a purchasing perspective, may be where the delay or concern would be. Is that correct, Mr. Abel?
Yes, sir.
So I don't know. I think that we probably ought to be asking the county attorney and our purchasing folks to weigh in on that, if there's a way to fast track it or not fast track it. I mean,
I first want to make sure that everyone was updated or briefed. I wanted to make sure anybody had any questions. And then I was hoping that we can either talk to the purchasing department, county manager via the purchasing department, and then the county attorney to see what we could do. Commissioner Lockhart, then Commissioner Hurd.
So I was updated, I was briefed, and I still feel very comfortable with staff's original recommendation, and that I believe it will bring competition to the process that we wouldn't otherwise have.
Commissioner Hurd?
I am in a similar category and would also tell you that I I think it not only will limit competition, but I also think the timing of switching gears, it just doesn't feel right.
Okay.
And so the possibility of delays on top of the timing of it, on top of restricting competition, or even the appearance of restricting competition is just untenable for me.
I wanted to ask the board for their opinion first before we asked anyone else.
Commissioner, I do believe that maybe from the beginning it would have been the right thing, but I think the timing is now, I'm not going into the specifics, but I think the timing right now would not be conducive to going to that area.
Then we will put it to bed. It's that simple. That's why I think it's appropriate for us to have conversations. On that same vein, I did get an email from the clerk of the court. That's why Mr. Grant's still here. There are still some issues with floor plan changes as well as the judges, and I wanted to make sure that the judges' issues are being addressed as well as the clerk of the court's issues are being addressed. Could the county manager give us an update to ensure us that both the judges and the clerk's issues are being addressed?
They are. We have a meeting. I have a meeting with Mr. Malloy Thursday morning, and I have a meeting with Mr. Malloy and the judges and staff and the consultants on Thursday afternoon to kind of sort through requests and options so that we can bring something back to this board for further consideration. We're up to 3 new courtrooms being requested, and we need to sort through impacts on the clerk space plus expansion of the building, and work through that on Thursday afternoon. Hopefully, we can have something to at least have some other direction other than where we are right now.
Do you believe you'll be able to give us an update at the next meeting?
The goal is to have something on the 14th meeting, yes, or the 12th, whatever day that
Commissioner
is.
Zimbauer?
And I appreciate that. My only concern is, and I look forward to that update, is at least the optics, for me, appears that this is an ever-moving target. We hired a company to do a needs and space study. Matter of fact, we spent $1.4 some million to do that on a $900,000 competitively bid contract because there were change orders that added another $600,000 to it. And when that was done, that was handed over to architects to review. All the stakeholders were involved in the decision-making process. It was my understanding that everybody was included and everybody was in agreement. And then there were some subtle changes, which, okay, I got that. But it seems like no matter what we've done, I mean, this began when Commissioner Lockhart and I came on this board almost 4 years ago. For whatever unknown reasons, after paying the $1.4 million, after having stakeholder meetings, after the interactions supposedly were happening, now we sit with continually changing. I would just like us to see some way to arrive at a finality of an agreement. Adding 3 courtrooms and adding additional cost, for me is, did our space study miss that? What happened? I mean, we spent $1.4 million of taxpayers' dollars to arrive at what a needs was, including those stakeholders, and now we're hearing we need 3 more courtrooms, and we may need some other ancillary things. I would just like a drill down and understanding where we believe all this went wrong so that we can, hopefully in the future, not expend taxpayers' dollars that don't result in a viable outcome.
I'm sure that'll all be brought up once it's brought back to us. Is that correct?
That is our attempt.
Commissioner Lockhart, then Constantine, then her.
So from one commissioner feedback, my priority for that building, since it is the citizens' building and they're the ones that are using it, whether they're there to conduct business with the clerk or they're there because they're conducting business with the judiciary or for whatever their purpose of being in that building is, I've heard just some highlights of some of the concerns, and so I'll publicly share what my feedback is, and maybe this will help with your conversation with Judge Rexidler or whomever. The citizens entering that building need to be able to conduct their business without having to leave breadcrumbs to get somewhere else in the building to conduct their business. And I think that I've also heard feedback that from a safety and security perspective, law enforcement would like to keep that as close to the front as possible as well. I've visited that building on numerous occasions for whether it's serving on the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board committee meetings. I've been there at different times of the day for different reasons. And it doesn't seem like it's a well-used, busy building now all the time. And so I would like to have a better perspective of the use of the existing courtrooms and how they're being utilized now. I know the pandemic has changed some things, and maybe some judges are doing a lot of things online now that maybe they might have been doing in person, or maybe, I don't want to do their job for them, but I need to understand how they're doing their job so that I can get a better sense of whether or not three additional courtrooms is a reasonable request. I'd also like to know what some of the other judges think. If I want to make sure that the feedback that we're getting includes all of their input and it's not just one person's thought process. If there's a way that you can divine that, that would be great. The other thing that is imperative, you get people there for whatever reason at different times of the day. We have to have a place where they can have a snack. The only snack availability from what I can see right now from the latest drawings that I looked at, and granted it's just cubes of color on a piece of paper, is for folks who are serving jury duty. And there are other people who might, want to be able to have access to some snacks. I know that sounds kind of silly. Maybe we just had lunch, so it's not because I'm hungry. but that's important for us to have that available to our citizens who are there. So those are just kind of the highlights. And I, again, not wanting to tell the judges how to schedule their courtrooms or how to do their jobs, but I'd like to have a better understanding of the current utilization of the space.
Commissioner Constantine?
Short and sweet. Every time we make one change for the judges, then I hear from the clerk about another problem. And so, Mr. Abel, get them in a room, throw a Snickers bar in the middle. Nobody's going to leave until we get this worked out. I mean, that's all I'm going to say. I agree with my colleagues, but I just wanted to be short.
Thank you. Commissioner Herr?
Yeah, I think words matter, and the terminology of new courtrooms might be a tad misleading. We're leaving a building that has a plethora of courtrooms and moving into a building with less than what we're leaving combined with what we already have. And so and I haven't been here for 4 years, so I wasn't part of the whole build-up to this, but my perspective is they're new now. It has been mentioned that they were in a drawing before, but in total, we're not adding 2 new courtrooms. We're actually condensing the number of courtrooms. So I think that matters from the perspective that we have, because we're not there every day, and we don't know how the courts work. So I think we need definitions when you come back with what the solution is. What do we have now? What are we going to? What is the current need? What is the future need?
Great. Commissioner Zimbauer?
And I would only ask staff maybe go back and look at the original courthouse discussions. That was all designed, and the intent was for future renovation, which we're about to endeavor upon, and converting existing courtrooms at a later date. Now, that time may have come and passed from the original intent, and maybe there's not enough room there for the load that the judges have. I don't know. But it was always the intention, if you listen to those board meeting videos and the records, when that was originally built, the whole intent was for Sanford to move, and that would be remodeled to accommodate future needs in the judicial. And maybe that study was flawed back then, I don't know. But what I do know is we spent $1.4 million taxpayers' dollars to get a recent study for all of that between the annex and a remodel. So a lot of ground to cover, so I agree with.
Thank you.
with all my
Before we
colleagues.
close this up for today, I would like to ask the Clerk of the Court, Grant Malloy.
Well, I appreciate
Any
the
input?
discussion, and I really impressed with Joe is going to meet with us and try to come to a reasonable conclusion. My main concern is from the clerk's office perspective. We're kind of the heartbeat of the courthouse, and what we have right now works very well. You can walk in the courthouse. Most of your business is done in the clerk's office. You make a left, and you're right there. If you compare this to other courthouses like Osceola or Volusia, you try to find the clerk's office or do business, in Osceola, you literally have employees that are information kiosks that will guide you around the courthouse. So what we have right now works very well for customers. It's going to be a lot busier in the future because I'm closing 2 other customer service counters to combine over here. So we're anticipating, as I mentioned in my email, about 50,000 customers a year will be using this, the counters right there. They're designed to be full service. You don't have to hunt around to find small claims or circuit or that sort of thing. Everything will be done at one location. So, and then the security involved there, being close to the deputies is a real advantage. We have people with active warrants that often get arrested. There are very angry customers often. They're yelling about payment plans or child support cases. I've literally seen employees hide behind their desk, even though we have deputies there now and security glass. I've seen people hide behind their desk when things occur in front of those counters. So to me, from my position, from the clerk's office, what we have works. I would hate to see that get destroyed, in the remodel process. And the last options did just that. So I hope something can be worked out protecting that customer service and that security aspect.
Thank you, Grant. Commissioner Herbert, this will be the last statement on this.
Just
issue.
a
We'll move on.
question. At what point in the process was it contemplated to close down the remote sites?
Well, I'm not closing remote sites. It's the civil courthouse and the recording.
Okay, so that sounded different from that.
Yeah, the branches will remain open.
Okay.
It's just that since we're closing the civil, that will move over.
Yep.
That includes child support and, other issues. And then the recording right now is not a real user-friendly place. Moving that over to the CJC makes a lot of sense. That also brings passports over. So there's a lot more services available right there. So it will be highly used.
Thank you, Grant.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no future agenda items requested, so now we'll move on to the public comments. Which request do we have, Shani?
Yes, the first one is Maria Ramirez.
I live at 2975 Boland Drive. We've had issues for several years with drainage problems that overwhelm our ditches and swales. The commercial business that are allowed to continue constructing near our street are being constructed at a higher elevation, and which is exacerbating the issue. On the same side of those businesses, there is a swell that does not have an exit, and it does not drain. And this water comes over across the street into our garage, into our front yard, and it is affecting us, especially me, because I have a chronic disease. And this damage is continued because we can't resolve the issue because y'all won't fix the problem. And it's just getting worse. And my question is, why do you allow these businesses to profit with no disregard to the homeowners that have lived there 30-plus years? And you just allow it to happen. What are you going to do to resolve our issues? They affect people.
Mr. Chairman?
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Lockhart.
Yeah, could you say the address again and where this is
On
happening?
Bowland Drive.
2975 Bowland Drive,
B-O-L-I-N?
Boland.
Boland, okay. And what part of the county is this in?
It's Seminole.
I know, is it
South.
Altamont,
Trail.
Oviedo?
South
It's
Altamont Trail.
Oviedo.
Yeah,
Oviedo,
South
okay,
End,
all
South
right.
Trail.
So is this something that, Commissioner Delara, you're already working on?
We're
Okay,
aware of it.
all right. I wasn't familiar with the street address. I just wanted to place it and know if it was in an area that I might oversee or work with. Thank you.
I'll bring staff up, and we can address it. Thank you.
Okay.
Can we have
Thank you.
Mr. Dredge come up for a moment?
Ms. Bowen, do you want me to pull up the pictures?
Huh?
Do you want me to pull up the pictures?
You can, I have some pictures.
Sure.
The garage, that's the porch, our back porch. This is the water sitting in our garage. And then that's the front. And it comes from across the street, which technically, I don't know if it's a swamp pond or what, but it sits there and it affects us.
For the record, John Judge, Public Work Director, County Engineer.
So before I ask you the question, John, just to give a little bit of background to the other commissioners, I know your staff is looking into this. They've done some surveys, okay? On the south side of, on the west side of Bowland Drive is a series of block ditches, correct?
Yes,
on
and I
the
believe-
east side of Bowland Drive is a pipe system that you've actually done some surveying. You've surveyed both of them, correct?
Yes, I believe Owen did the survey, so our survey crew did some type of survey. I don't know if they completed yet, all of it, but they were doing some survey.
Well, I know
work.
they've completed the survey, and we've asked them to go back through the surveys to see which lines that they could upsize.
Okay.
I don't know if you're aware of this yet.
Yeah, I'm aware of it. They're doing a survey, but I'm not aware if that already completed the evaluation of the piping system. But I know that they did the survey. The survey has been completed.
I can tell you, Commissioner, staff is looking at this. When do you think they'll be done, John?
I'll get with the staff probably in a week or so. I should be able to give you some update on it.
I think it's important that we let staff finish the survey to see what they can upsize to get that water flowing from north to south, I believe it is. So, and then, Ms. Rebecca Hammock, can you come down, please? Thank you, John. Rebecca, I know that can you give us your name and who you are?
Sure. For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director.
I do know that you're aware of the commercial development on the west side of Bowland Drive, correct?
Yes, so you're referring to the Wash and Go?
Wash and Go, and then there's also a doctor's office too as well, because we got a couple other people that's going to be talking about it in a moment. Can you just discuss how those pieces of property are being developed? Because we're not seeing any of it, because it's all going straight zoning, correct? Can you
Yes.
discuss that a little bit?
Sure. So there's a strip of properties along Alafaya, which are zoned C2, general commercial, which have been zoned that way since the county adopted its zoning map. And then there are homes residential development on the backside of Boland, but the homes front Boland, and then so they're actually looking at the back of the commercial properties that are along Alafaya.
And
And because those properties have straight zoning on them, they're zone C2, if they develop in accordance with the allowable zoning district, they just come in for site plan review. And those are done through the Development Review Committee at an administrative level.
Correct. We don't see that up here.
Correct.
But I do believe that there were members of your group, as well as John Dredge's group, that are working together to try to fix the stormwater problems on that road. I believe that's happening.
That's correct. And Bill White, I know, is very familiar and has been working with the residents as well as the Public Works staff to try to address the issues.
Thank you. Ma'am, can you tell us, when were those photos taken?
mistaken, August 2018.
Okay.
That had happened prior, and it had happened since. I just got those photos that I could find.
Can you come up to the podium, please, because I don't think we can hear everything you're saying.
Those pictures were from August 2018. It had happened prior, it was like in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And then it's happened since. I just only had those pictures.
Okay. Can you leave your contact information with Shani? We'll make sure that we, through staff, try to address your concerns and understand what your concerns are.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, Shani.
Steve Gerwig.
Hello, I'm Steve Gerwig. I live at 2911 Boland Drive, and I've been a resident there for 35 years. So I've seen several changes throughout Boland Drive. I think it'd be quicker if I use the overhead instead of going through if I can just do that, because there'll be some of the pictures
Shani,
I want to show.
can you stop the clock for a moment until he gets set? There's also a microphone over there, sir.
Yes, sir. It does. I'll just swap them over here then. Okay, what I want to bring to attention to is the O'Reillys at this point, which is right here. And like she said, here's all the residents' homes. They all face all the commercial property. Right now, the O'Reillys, I went down and filled out a FOIA report to find out exactly what they were going to do at the O'Reillys to see if they were going to cut a hole in the block wall and run a semi-truck down this road to fill the O'Reillys. And when I went to the building or zoning department, they told me that no, there's no way that they can do that. They're not allowed to use the residential road because they have access to Alfea. And I said, okay, thanks. I said, is there anything in reference to the drawings this shows for the back wall across the back of the property? She said, you have to fill out a FOIA report. I did. I got the FOIA report. There was no details at all whatsoever on the back wall. There's no repairs. There's no raising of the back wall. There's nothing. And as you can see, this is the back wall that's in front of my house. Now, there's been 3 different businesses that's been on this property in the past 30 years, and this is the first set of drawings that's went through zoning. So nobody's ever put in a retention pond, nobody's ever put in any type of buffer trees or nothing. And I have fought this for 30 years only to try to get them to do exactly what's in the code. That's it. Not reinvent the wheel, just help me and change things out. I'm very well aware of what needs to be done because I'm a developer myself. So they tell me that there's nothing in the drawings on the new O'Reillys to do this wall at all. Now, they're raising this lot 4 foot. So if they're raising the wall 4 foot, my other question was, are they raising the wall? They told me no. I said, why not? I said, the buffer wall, who's it buffering, them or me? Well, it's buffering them. I said, well, then why wouldn't they raise it 4 foot? The same as what they're raising the building pad. Mary Robinson told me that it was measured from the outside of the wall. I said, well, it's not buffering me, it's buffering them. So at this point in time, there's basically nothing being done to this wall. From what I can tell on the drawings, and there's no intent to do anything to the wall. And that was one of my concerns. And in that comment, I'm out of time.
Just if you can, try to wrap it up.
Okay. In that same comment, they told me that you cannot use the residential road. Well, if you look at, this is 2989. This is a dentist office. They use Boland Drive. they use this residential road for that commercial use. And I said, why are they allowed to use it? She said they have a hardship. I said, it's a created hardship. They built their building, they waited 2 years later, and then they stated, you know, we can't get to the back of our property, we have a hardship. It is a self-created hardship. So you can't claim a hardship when they created it. They still sell chainsaws, cut one end of the building off, or turn the building the other way. They created the problem. They have access to Althea, and they're using Boland Drive, and they got their dumpster back there. They have all their employees parked back there. And on this detail, right here, you can see there's a dentist's office. Here's a home that's got 4 kids. Here's a home that's got 3 kids. And every single day when I go down that road to go home, they're out in the road playing. And they're running, dumpster trucks and stuff in there to pick up them dumpsters. Their employees are running in and out of there. And they point blank told me that they couldn't use it, but they are, and they're not doing anything about it. Now, I have one other quick aspect, because I know I'm out of time. Here is the address of 2989. Now, this property here, they built the building, they submitted, everything was fine. The buffer system, which you can see they put in, is solid. There's not an issue there at all whatsoever. They decided to bring an arborist in, and this is what it looks like now. And in the meeting that we had with Mr. Delary and Mr. Applegate, I brought this up to their attention. They cut away all the buffer system. They said, well, sir, that's not our concern. You need to take that up with code enforcement. I said, okay, fine. Mr. Applegate said, call code enforcement. I did call code enforcement. Code enforcement said, that's not our responsibility. You need to call Mary Robinson. They went out and looked at it. They wrote an email back, which she has all the email tickets and a whole bunch more pictures, stating that they'd done a very nice job trimming the trees, and they painted the inside of the wall, and they tried to get rid of the mildew, and it looks really nice on the inside. And she sent an email and took pictures of the inside. Whenever I called code enforcement, the complaint was for the outside. And what they didn't even go out and look at was half of the trees they cut down is still laying in that ditch right here. They didn't even pick them up. Nobody said anything about the wall. Nobody said anything about the buffer system. This is what they were supposed to put the buffer system in. And as you can see in this picture right here, here are all the vacuums for the car wash. And code 30-129 states that all this stuff has to be buffered and cannot be seen by the resident homeowners. All right? I can see everything over there because they cut the whole buffer system out. Now, if we took and cut these trees completely out, the only thing I would lose would be the canopy up here because the buffer's gone.
Excuse me, sir.
The buffer's gone. Here's the buffer.
Excuse me, sir, I believe you're out of time.
Thank you.
What I'd like to do is, I'll get to the commission in a minute. What I'd like to do is ask staff to get his contact information. I believe we have it, just want to make sure we have it. And then we can have, by the way, just for the record, this is not Brian Applegate, this is Paul Chippock. Even though the plaque may be different.
She's got all of them on the...
Just want to make sure.
Yeah,
I'll
she's got
email
even
them to you.
more.
I've got
I know you
I'll
can give
make
us
sure they
more.
get to-
Thanks for giving me extra time.
And we'll get staff to look at it again and report back to all of us. Commissioner Zimbauer?
I think this is a question for Attorney Paul Chippock. We've got more of this going on around the county. So my question is, with these buffers that may or may not, I don't know this specific instance this gentleman's speaking to, and whether that was in a development order at the time that property was developed or not, regardless, yes or no. My question is, in light of what the Florida legislature has done to preempt us on controlling, cutting down trees, trimming trees, removing trees, where do we stand with that? In other words, if we've issued a development order that says it has to be an opaque barrier, but the Florida legislature passes their law last year and says, look, we can't dictate any longer about trimming of trees and so on and so forth. And if an arborist says, this needs to happen, they can take the tree out, we can't charge a fee, a permit, nor do we have any say-so. Where do we stand in that realm with a DO that dictates a certain buffer versus a DO that does not?
For the record, Paul Chipok, Deputy County Attorney. It's a delicate balancing. We have the regulations for what is required of the buffer, but then there's also the best management practices of how to maintain that buffer. Because if we just let it grow wild and not trim it periodically, it's not healthy for the trees. And again, I would defer to planning staff and the arborist as to what the proper best management practices are, but it can't just be left to be wild all the time. It does need a certain amount of maintenance and has to be done in accordance with, like I said, the best management practices.
So if we, and we've had this discussion with DOs and setbacks, especially on PDs, where we've dictated it must remain an opaque, buffered landscaping. It's obviously, in this case, no longer opaque. You can see right, you can see right through it. Again, I don't know if this one's in a DO or not, but let's hypothetically say it was in a DO, that it was supposed to remain an opaque area of buffering. Under the state's new guidelines, are we preempted, and even with a DO on that?
Several factors will come into play. To the best of my recollection, the state preemption is specifically to residential properties and not necessarily commercial properties.
Understood.
So this buffer we're talking about is on commercial property, not residential property. So the state statutes, I do not believe, would control in this situation. Further, this, as Ms. Hammack said, is straight zoning commercial C2 property. So the buffering requirements are what is in the code, not what may be in the development order if it was a PD, which usually can be a little bit stricter than what we have in our straight code for buffering.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Hammack, you wanted to add something?
Just to follow up, I did want to, this is the landscape plan that was approved for the site back in 1994. It was a site plan that came in for approval 93, 94. So there were 15 trees that were required as part of the site plan approval, and those 15 trees still exist. They've just been pruned and cleaned up. We did have the county's new natural resource officer do a site inspection, and she took some pictures. She did go back out to the site again, I believe yesterday, and she did also notice what the gentleman had said, that there were still some limbs and branches left there, and that the outside of the wall needs to be cleaned up. So we can utilize code enforcement to have the property owner do those two things. But in terms of the trees, her belief is that they have been trimmed properly, and she can speak more to that if you have any further questions.
I don't think we need additional information to be told that they've been treated properly. I believe we take your word for it. Any other comments on this? Thank you. Thank you, Shani. Next.
John Hovey.
Rebecca, you may want to stay there.
John Hovey, 2957 Bowling Drive, Oviedo, Florida. Can I speak to that without time starting yet? Just real quick, I just had an idea. The foliage?
Sure.
What if the county, because this is probably grandfathered and there is nothing there, isn't there kind of something the county can do to backfill some of those trees? Ask the owner for permission to plant something there that would fill in the lower part, because I think that's the issue. And you're not talking $1.4 million. I mean, there's a lot of money out there. Anyways, that's not why I'm here.
Thank you.
First, I want to thank Commissioner Delary and his staff for assisting us on this project. This Wash and Go project has been going on for over a year now. We have numerous discrepancies that we've documented because we have a commissioning agent as a neighbor, and he's filtered through every single thing that this car wash has done. But I'm here because there's a noise ordinance in Seminole County to protect the residents and to limit noise intrusion where commercial and residential properties abut. And that's what I am. I live directly across from the car wash. Do you have that picture?
I do.
I don't know which one you want to pull up first.
The other one. That's from my driveway, and that's the trees that are planted currently that can be trimmed later on. I don't think anybody here would want to live in my house and have to look at that. When this was, I'm skipping back from the beginning to a couple of months ago, they fired this thing up to see how, make sure everything's running, and it was wind turbines. You couldn't talk over the sound that was coming out of that. Now, how that can be, the opacity rating on that property can be coexist with a neighborhood right next to it within 60 feet of the public right-of-way is wrong. So there's a problem here about the noise level. How did that noise affect our, where we live? The Seminole County Sheriff's Department came out after that to do their tests on it. 7 locations on Bowling Drive, 7 failed tests, 7 warnings were issued because it was so loud. So again, does anybody care? Does anybody here care what happens in this kind of application? This is C2 zoning, as stated, and you've got a fully automated car wash in there. That ain't right. That's all I'm saying. That's not right. And we've been working with Commissioner Delary and his staff, and they've done a very good job of helping us facilitate, because we were stonewalled by the building department and land planning, development, whoever all those people are, in getting answers in time. They had the Sheriff's Department come out yesterday. I requested in a meeting with him 2 weeks ago that I be notified, because it needs to be a comprehensive test. The doors need to be open and fully operational, because they're going to operate from 8 to 8, 7 days a week. They were not. Can you put the other picture? Can you hold my time, please? So she could put the other team picture up. Well, can you add some back on, like in a basketball game?
Like in the basketball game.
Who's got the basketball game on?
That's the current test yesterday. I had to leave work because I didn't get nothing from staff, as Commissioner Delary had requested, that I want to be there, and that all eyes are on this, and this is a high priority. I was not notified in any way, shape, or form by staff, except via email. But you know what? I work for Orange County. I don't carry a computer around all day. I got a phone call from my neighbor. He said that the cops are coming to do the test. That's what it looked like. The roll-up doors down. It's 2/3 of the way up. They were running sedans through there, and it was not a fully operational test. How can you defend, Mr. Chiplock, how can you defend a test that has no baseline? How can you? It's not valid. It's not a valid test, because they were running this thing so that they could pass, not so they could operate 8 to 8, 7 days a week. So why are we getting screwed here? What is the county going to do to stand up and go, you know what, we need to have a independent third party come and test this. We need to, this is, it's just, if they pass the test, I wouldn't care, because we wouldn't hear it. Our property values are decreased because of this. It's right in front of my house, 3 other houses, and it's on our street. His house is the last street, the 7th house on there that failed, and yet this is acceptable. To answer your question from earlier, they were out there at 1 o'clock today testing this again to pass. And Annie Silway is driving this really hard to get this CO'd, so get it off their plate. And that puts the burden on us. Every time we have an issue, every time they run this car wash with the doors open and they run a pickup truck or an SUV through there, those doors are going to open up. They should have done this in the original or the operating configuration. Not like that. And yet, well, I'm sorry, Commissioner Delary, but you committed that all eyes are on this and everything, and it's going to be a good test. There was not a single county person out there except the 2 sheriffs. They had to stop the test because their equipment wasn't functioning properly. They stated to us in person that they're road deputies. They've never done this. They were trained a year ago. They've got the stuff in their car. They didn't even know what to do. The sergeant had to come out and say, look, we're not going to do this because we can't get accurate testing. Their meters tested 10 decibels higher than the other 4 meters that my neighbor had and the car wash owners had. 4 decibels higher, 10, that would have failed this test.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lockhart first.
Yeah. So I appreciate and I respect your question, because I think it's a valid question. Do any of you care? And I think the first thing you need to know is, this is the first I've heard of this issue.
Oh, it's been buried.
Okay, so just know, I don't know if any of my colleagues have been made aware of this issue, and I respect that this is in Commissioner Delary's district, and he's been meeting with you and handling this and talking to staff, but it is helpful for all of us to understand what it is that you're going through. And so I appreciate you being here and taking time from work to draw it to our attention. I don't know that it should have had to come to that, personally. But I do have some questions for staff, if I could ask. We have scenarios with car washes in a C2 zoning backed up to residential all over this county. I'm not saying it's okay, I'm not saying it's not annoying, but I just want to better understand is this a unique situation with the proximity of the car wash operating this close to residential homes?
It could be. I mean, I'm not saying that there isn't other locations within the county where you have residential and commercial next to each other. It's unique in the sense that you often don't see where the homes are facing, and so the homes' front yards are basically the back of the commercial properties. In this case, the situation was, it was under construction. The residents in the area had said, I think they were doing some testing on the vacuums or on the blowers and the car wash, and they had a complaint about the noise. So it was done through a code enforcement process where the sheriff's office went out there, did the testing, and it failed. And so their next step would be, so then we spoke with the applicant, and they put in sound attenuation measures to try to lessen the noise. And once those were in place, then they were supposed to reschedule the sound test. And so we actually did we found out on Friday, and I think Annie can probably fill in more details than I can, that the owner of the car wash, they wanted to get the sound test done as quickly as possible, and we were notified on Friday that they were going to reach out to the sheriff's office. So when I found that out, I did forward that email to Commissioner DeLaury's office, so he was aware. And then when we found out yesterday when it was going to be, we also sent an email to the residents that we had been dealing with, to let them know, because we didn't have exact times from the sheriff's deputies. And then the gentleman who had originally done, the sheriff's deputy who had originally done the sound test, was on vacation this week. And the car wash owners are obviously in a hurry because they're taking significant business losses from putting in all the sound attenuation and all the delays in doing this. And I understand that's the cost of business, but so they were in a hurry to try to get this done because this was the last thing holding them up so that they could get their CO and they could get their site permit. So they were coordinating directly with the sheriff's office with the assistance of Annie.
And if I may just add, prospectively, in our site planning process, because again, with straight zoning, you go straight to site plan. C2 allows car washes, okay? In the site planning process, it does reference that you have to meet the other standards in the rest of the land development code, including the performance standards. When you go to the performance standards, one of them does reference you to the noise ordinance. So the chain of regulation is already in place. Prospectively, at DRC, just last week, we had another car wash come through, and in no uncertain terms, the car wash was told, you have to meet the performance standards, beware of the noise and the lighting requirements. So prospectively, staff has already addressed the issue.
So just a little background, if I may. We've been working on this with staff for a number of months. How many months, I'm not going to tell you because it's been a long time. And the big issue for the longest time has been drainage and buffers, correct?
Yes. And we also...
Just bear with me
Okay.
for a moment, Rebecca. You'll have as much time as you want to speak. I'm not trying to cut you off. And so then after we've been dealing with the buffers and the setbacks and the drainage, it's just recently, and I say recently, say about the last month and a half, it's maybe 2 months, it's been about the noise ordinance. And I will tell you that one of the residents that did contact me, I don't remember who, I could not hear them on the phone because the air dryers were running. And that to me was shocking to hear that. Then we actually met with staff and had staff review the sound ordinance as well as Mr. Chipak has talked about, that they were required to meet the sound ordinance. I think that's what you told me in my office, correct?
That is correct.
So there was some assurances that they would be following the sound ordinances, and that there should be some protection to the residents. With that same meeting, we talked about, at that time, everyone agreed that the residents would be notified and the residents would be available to witness the test. I believe that's also took place. Wasn't aware that it took place today, even though, and I was surprised to see you here today as well. I'm always glad to see you. I was just surprised to see you. Well, now I want Rebecca to address it.
Oh, sure. So we also looked at, so the county has right-of-way, that's unpaved right-of-way on Boland, and so we also looked to see if we could plant, the county could plant trees along Boland within the right-of-way to try to help buffer the residents. Even when the site plan originally came in, the first thing I said is we're going to have to require a wall because the residents are right back there, and we need to create an adequate buffer. Unfortunately, we can't plant a landscape buffer there because there is the drainage ditch. It's an older subdivision, and so the drainage is in roadway swales. But we did plant, the county, through our Arbor Trust Fund, we did plant an additional trees behind the car wash to even further help buffer from the residents. In terms of the timing of the sound test, I mean, that's really up to, the applicant had the code violation for the noise. It's up to them to reschedule to try to, have it retested to see if they're in compliance.
Commissioner, then Zimbauer, then Lee, Constantine.
There are two recurring themes that came up in this discussion that we've heard from other areas in the county, and I just want to put them on somebody's radar to figure this out. One is this noise testing and our capability versus our incapability, and we need to get with the sheriff's office, and I personally would like somebody from the sheriff's office here telling us about their capabilities with noise testing, because we either have to find a different solution or improve their capabilities, or improve the perception of their capabilities. I don't know which one, but that is too consistent for it to be an accident. And then the second one is this notion of the wall being a buffer and which side of the wall we're measuring from. I have that in my district where the thought was it was going to be a 4-foot or a 5-foot wall, and it is from the side of the subdivision that got put smack up against the other neighbors, but on their side it's 3-foot wall, whatever. And so that seems to be a recurring theme. And the notion that we have to build up, right? There's new rules that require us to build up now, and that creates this dynamic. So I think we got to get a handle either in our code or in our practice around the height of the wall has to be for the people that are being buffered, not the buffering.
Right, because currently it's measured from grade and on the property on which it's located, and a lot of times that grade is higher because of stormwater, or not new, but stormwater requirements. That may be newer than the adjacent development.
Commissioner Constantine.
Mr. Chairman, to follow up on what Commissioner Hurst said, I think all of us have a great deal of empathy for what you all are going through, and that needs to be addressed. And I think that Commissioner DeLore and all of us have heard that loud and clear. And so I'm sure that moving forward that there's going to be some action taken. But one of the things that Mr. Chipak said is absolutely true. I'm seeing, in the real estate industry, time and again, these car washes are the thing now. And they're coming, more and more of them, and they're like super washes, not the small ones that we had, but the super washes. We need to look at the land development code to make sure that we are moving forward, addressing this noise even before they get approved. Because if it's going to be in the zoning, and, we just need to make sure that we are addressing that so we are not going to have other problems like these gentlemen and young lady have had.
Thank you. Rebecca, did they pass the noise test today?
That I don't know. My understanding, here, I'll let.
Hi, for the record, Annie Silloway, Senior Planner. I was in contact with the owner of the Wash and Go, and they went out earlier today to do an ambient test, and I asked him to please let me know what that is. They tested before the car wash was turned on. He did explain.
Really? Yeah, the ambient
For the
noise.
ambient
For
noise.
ambient.
For ambient
Okay.
noise.
Got it.
Okay,
Got it.
because it does front onto Alafaya, and from Boland
sorry.
Drive, you can hear
I
Alafaya.
retract my guffaw.
No worries. And the readings came back high. I did not get a specific number. And then I made sure, I called at 12:30, called Preston back, and, I asked him, I said, are they going out at 1? Are you coordinating okay to get the noise test done? Since, of course, they were warned that they were exceeding the noise levels. And he said, yes, they will be out today at 1. So I came down here. I haven't spoken with Preston yet, or haven't gotten any of the reports from the sheriff's office. So that is my updated status on the noise ordinance, or the noise test.
Commissioner Zimbo, you want to say something earlier?
No. I think it's all been said. I think the bottom line is I think all of us up here care.
Yeah.
I would only ask that our staff reach out to some of the cities. Thankfully, I had to deal with this in my district, where the city of Castleberry had approved a commercial development that backs up to a residential in the unincorporated part of Seminole County. They did not abide by the sound ordinance. Fortunately, we were able to get the supermarket to comply with the sound ordinance. It took the better part of 9 months of talking with the owners and so forth, but it was not part of Castleberry's development consideration when it was done right up against our unincorporated residential area. So I think we all care. We all have a concern. I think we hear you, and I think we understand this is an issue, and I think we're all committed to addressing it. So thank you.
Rebecca, as we move forward, can we let the citizens know what the results of the test are today?
Yes, absolutely.
And if it does fail and have to be retested, please let them know when the no test is going to be.
Okay. And we are dependent on the sheriff's office in terms of the scheduling, so we will do our best to let them know. But just for clarification, we did, for this particular site, we did not issue we held up their certificate of occupancy, we held up their final site permit until they came into compliance with the noise ordinance. So they did, after that, after we found out that they had failed, they did install some mufflers on the blowers, and they also installed some acoustical fencing. So hopefully with those measures, that they will meet the noise ordinance.
And I'm not trying to speak for the residents, but once they get the CO, if they're in non-compliance, there's several people up and down that road that have sound meters. I'm sure we'll be getting code enforcement issues.
Yes, if there is an issue, then of course it would be referred to the sheriff's office to do the meter testing. Because in our noise ordinance, the responsibility goes to the sheriff's office for doing the meter readings.
Commissioner Zimbo?
This is a question to that point for Mr. Chipak. It would seem to me that we may be able to short circuit and circumvent what's happening to these residents. I mean, it's in our code, I understand, that the developer or occupant, business owner, has to meet the sound ordinance. The cost of proving that up should be on the business owner to prove up that, hey, this business is not going to exceed the sound ordinance. What I'm seeing here, we're having to chase it through the sheriff's office, which is our testing, notwithstanding this board decides to spend $15,000 to hire an outside service to go test it. Is there a mechanism in place that should be considered during the DRC process, during the development process, that before they get a CO, they're able to demonstrate they won't exceed the sound ordinance in a matter such as a car wash or something like that?
In essence, the site planning process, like I said, does reference back to the performance standards, that the commercial property has to meet the performance standards, which includes the noise ordinance. So it's been in our code that way for a long period of time. We are actively alerting the commercial businesses of that provision now when they are coming in for their site planning process through the DRC. It is an active comment that is placed in their DRC review. So they are on notice that they have to meet the noise requirements. And the burden is on them. If they're not doing it, as in this case, they will not get their final CO or site plan approval.
And
So to that point, and I understand, my question is a little different than that. Is there not a way before conditional on a CO, they have to demonstrate the noise they're going to generate? In other words, in this case, we have residents already showing up that are saying, hey, this thing exists, they're running it, we've been chasing this problem, trying to get resolution. My question is there something that we can do during that process? I understand we're putting them on notice, and when they have to meet it, and it's, the burden's on them, but actually the burden's falling on the residents, because here they are. I mean, they're here in our chambers saying, hey.
And Mr. Chairman, as you know, one of the things I said, while you were briefly gone, is that, we need to look at this moving forward. And I'm going to ask Ms. Hammack, if we can, and the Attorney's Office to please see if there's anything we're missing as we move forward, because these are going to, you just had one DRC. This is going to be as I said, this is a hot topic right now, a hot item, and there's going to be a lot of others that are going to come through.
So if it's okay, I can add to what Paul was saying. The one that just came through DRC, when we did bring this to their attention at the DRC meeting, they said, okay, we can give you the design engineering information to show you what the sound levels will be. So they voluntarily said, okay, we'll provide you that information to show you that we're in compliance with your performance standards. So there is something, yes, to answer your question, Commissioner Zemba, there is something. I don't believe our site plan checklist, which says this is what you have to submit with a site plan, requires that. So if that is something that the board would like us to look at, we would have to amend the site plan section of the code.
I think we should.
Yes.
So, Rebecca, are you talking about just when it comes to lighting? You can actually show a lighting plan or lumen plans or sound attenuation plans?
Yes, and lighting, so right now, we already have provisions in the code for lighting where people do have to submit a photometric plan, but we do know now, based on recent history, that's not enough.
Correct.
And so we actually have proposed changes that are going to be before you. They're in that draft that each of your offices received, and then we'll be talking about it at the work session in April.
Thank you. Be in touch, sir.
Thank you.
Would you mind coming back up to the podium, and then we're going to move on to the next issue?
Again, my suggestion would be to have some kind of baseline. If you don't have a criteria, a standard in which to judge the test by, who's to say they're not just making it up, leaving the doors half closed, running one blower instead of three, because that's what's happening, and you guys don't know it, and neither do they. They run a test, the sheriff department shows up, that this is what they did the other day, and that's why the sergeant pulled them off. They came out, the guys are like, okay, turn it on. And do you turn what on? They have no idea what's supposed to be on. It should be running at full capacity as though it was in fully operational. And unless that's required, we're going to get screwed every time. And that's what's happening now. And going forward is great, but I got to live with this 24 hours, 8 to 8, 7 days a week in my house for as long as I live there until I sell it. So there go my property values, his property values, and the other 8 houses on this street, or 9 houses. What do we do? And then also what happened with the screening? Oh, yeah. What happened with the screening is the retention pond that's back there, the emergency overflow pond. What'd you call it, a variation of the code? Yeah, a variation of the code. I think it's called a variance, was issued so they could shrink the size of the berm to the exterior wall that faces us, so they could gain more space in the pond, which limited the plantings, the space to plant. Now that's counteractive to what the code is, because it's supposed to be an unobstructed maintenance berm. So they did this to accommodate something that they couldn't pass. At least that's what I think. because they couldn't pass this. We've been on this for a year. And the same thing with 1294, Section 30, 1294. There's a code, that code is for the screening, not bushes and trees. It's for screen wall. It's masonry or wood, and it is supposed to block all view of all mechanical equipment from the public right-of-way. It doesn't, it still doesn't, and it's not gonna, because we got a 6-foot wall. They put up an 8-foot sound barrier, and I appreciate that because it's a really good thing, but it's a chain link fence with a plastic sheet on it, with zip tied. That doesn't cover the top of the roll-up doors. It doesn't cover other stuff. It doesn't meet the code requirement, and they want to CO this now. How is that possible?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Annie, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify about the sound test that was performed yesterday.
Yeah.
There were 4 cars that were run through the car wash yesterday. So,
is the system running at full?
well, what's full capacity? I mean, full capacity for the car wash is 1 car at a time. So they had to call out, I'm assuming it's volunteers or friends or family, out to the site because it's not operational in order to test.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're going to move on to the next issue now. Shaney, what's the next request?
George Celery.
Mr. Celery.
Good afternoon. George Celery, 5231 Shoreline Circle in Sanford. Going back to the beginning, you guys had a key strategic priority, I pull it off the web pages, growth management, effectively manage growth to ensure that development occurs in a responsible and sustainable manner that also supports population growth and maintains a healthy tax base. The strategy for implementing that was engage citizenry and create a community-driven land use vision plan for Seminole County, including the future land use map, comprehensive plan, and land development code. And a lot of the other Central Florida plans, everything community-driven, community, okay? Engaging citizens in the LDC and the comp plan updates. Great idea, then came COVID. Screwed everything up. It really did. And there's been workshops, and staff has done great. With all the other issues they've got going on, they've done great as far as that goes, in my opinion, and those with a lot of other group members that we're representing when we sit here, okay? However, based on a recent email, it appears that Canaan Associates is redoing a huge section of our land development plan. I think Commissioner Delary mentioned it. You're going to have an April 19th work session on it. 250-plus pages of strike-throughs and underlines and everything just thrown in there. I'm retired, and I'm not going to get through it until April 19th. I don't see with your schedules how you're going to come close. And planning and zoning's got to look at it April 6th. I feel sorry for them. I'd quit if I was them. And then I want you to take a look at Canaan and Associates. Go to their webpage. They are a design firm. They architecture, landscape architecture, and urban planning. Downtown winter parks, apartment buildings with commercial in the base. There's not a single rural area, suburban area thing on their whole website. I looked at every single part of it. There's nothing on there. And they've shown in the past when they did RMP and they planted trees in between the sidewalk and the curb, which we know is wrong. And by the way, Markham Landings just did that, and on the storm drain and next to the fire hydrant and everywhere else, because there's no real follow-up once you approve stuff. And there's no consequences if somebody does something wrong after you approve it. Lighting or whatever, it takes forever to battle with them to fix it, okay? So what it boils down to is the biggest issues in front of you every meeting, all the time. Cluster developments, because there's no definition, even though the American Planning Association has clear criteria. Is it 15 houses on an acre? They get clear definitions. Open space for residential. That's a huge issue. Why does a retention pond count and Lake Sylvan, the parks you can't even get to them? And then planned developments. Those 3 topics, you've all talked about it over and over and over. Let's just do those 3, just those 3. That's what I'd like to see, because that would solve 75% of your problems in here. You'd no longer have groups coming in here and fighting all the time. I know I'm a few minutes over, one, but anyway.
If you can wrap up, George, I'd appreciate
Yeah,
it.
if you could, please, schedule, if you want to do the 250 pages, great. Open space is in there, yank it out. Let's have a separate go-around on open space, cluster, and plan development. And I will get Friends of Wekiva, we'll get the Geneva Association, we'll get every single group out here to sit here and go through it with you. But then when you're done with it, you're done, and you won't have to deal with it anymore. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was the goal.
Our last speaker is Joe Humphreys.
Put up.
How shall we grow?
Hi, my name is Joe Humphreys. I live at 883 Cardinal Point Cove, Sanford, Florida. I don't think it comes as a surprise to any of you that I have some concerns and issues with the whole DRC process. You've heard a bunch of ideas and concerns today along those same lines. I don't doubt that everybody's doing the best that they can to try to sort through these things. But as was recently stated, the whole point of everything that we do is accountability, efficiency, and transparency. The whole DRC process is anything but that, with very few exceptions. I've been to tons of DRC, participated in tons of DRC meetings, P&Z meetings, these meetings, and at the end of the day, because of lack of community input, as you've heard here today, that's why we end up with so many of these issues. I've had a couple of the commissioners have been out and looked at some issues that have, again, on paper, look great, theoretically. But in practice, in the real world, not so much. We have issues, whether it's wall issues, go to tall trees, you can see buildings right in your backyard. I just had in my neighborhood, one of my residents just sold his house because we have a house right in his backyard that was never, ever anticipated being there. A project that I came before the Planning and Zoning, I talked with Mr. Madden, and I supported. But obviously, again, on paper, it was one thing, and in reality, it's a whole other set of circumstances. What I've discovered in sitting through some of these meetings is that I wonder who staff actually works for. And this is nothing personal. But I've heard coaching, basically trying to solve people's problems. As a developer, I never had that opportunity. Nobody ever gave me that. Nobody ever fixed my problems. They should be neutral. So what we are asking is that they allow the negotiations to be with our elected officials, who we elect. It's the only people that we have any control over. We don't control staff. Our input is as much as we can make it, but again, obviously they're doing a lot of things, as George said, so we try not to dominate their time. Staff has been very helpful in a lot of these issues. But I would ask that you ask the staff to be neutral in these issues, that they allow the developers to write their own DOs, and not, as a recent email stated, when a citizen asks for information, it's our practice that the DO that is presented to the BCC for consideration is drafted by staff and reviewed and approved by the county attorney's office. So before it even comes to you, the county attorney has already approved it. How can you have a legitimate argument or debate against your own county attorney if he's approved a DO before it even comes before you? I ask that you sit down, and as you've heard today, and as I think you've agreed, we need to make some changes to the DRC process. I'm available and happy to meet with you. I can show you lots of examples of similar situations that you've heard today. I'm more than happy to sit down with staff, with you all, and work through these things. I've had these conversations with Mr. Applegate. We need to make some changes. Thanks you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lockhart?
I have a question about DOs going to the county attorney. I would imagine that those are being approved as to form and sufficiency?
That is correct. It's part of the process. And in no way does that mean that any diminishment of your ability to review and debate and make changes to the conditions.
As you've experienced?
Right. Many times, yes.
Yeah, a time or two. Right.
Constantine?
So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we're really clear. So I'm envisioning a world where each developer writes their own development order, and I'm seeing chaos because we have a pattern, we have an expectation, we have things that we know have to be in there. I'm not sure I understand. Is what we are doing out of line, or are we, help me out with that?
I think Rebecca will, or Mary will address that.
For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. I'll just provide some clarification, then I think Mary wanted to also say a couple things. We do have a template for our development orders and for our developers' commitment agreements. And so when an applicant submits for, say, a planned development, for example, which requires a development order, they'll submit a draft development order. And then we basically go back and forth with them, and we say, well, we recommend these additional conditions, and then so we kind of go back and forth with them and negotiate the development order. Ultimately, at the end, the staff has control of the final draft that goes before the board. And if the developer doesn't agree with our conditions, we've even had circumstances where we've come to the board with a staff recommended development order and the applicant's development order. And so the development order that ultimately comes to you does go to the county attorney's office for legal sufficiency review.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner.
Commissioner Constantine?
Just not to address or disagree with Mr. Humphreys, because God knows I love him. But Mr. Humphreys, I'm willing, and I hope that everybody else is willing, on April 19th, to sit here all day. And this meeting we have a 9 to 12 and a 12:15 to 2 planned. And I don't know if that's as long as we can go. But if we need to continue, we can go another day. We can go that day. I agree with you. We need to have community input. We all agreed with that. I don't think there's anything that you said that we disagree with, but I just want to make sure that when we go through this land development code, you are welcome to be here, and every other person. That's why we're having a work session. I'm sorry, George.
For 3 minutes. And no rebuttal. That's the way it works.
Mary Moskowitz, please.
For the record, Mary Moskowitz, Planning and Development Manager. Just some clarification. So on April, immediately after our Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we will be having a work session for a Planning and Zoning Board, because ultimately they're the ones that have to make a recommendation to you all about land development code changes. We felt it was prudent that they have a work session to have an opportunity to review draft copies of the code prior to making any recommendations. Immediately following that work session, we'll also have an opportunity to meet with the community and have any questions or answers. We decided to combine the work session with the same meeting date that we're having the Planning and Zoning Commission, because that was already a time and date available, and we knew that, staff would be available and that it would be convenient for people to do that. So there is opportunity for the public to participate in the process. This is only the beginning of the process. We've put together the draft. This is the final complete draft that everybody has had a chance to work on, but this has been something we've been working on for the last, now almost 2 years now. We've been doing the land development code revisions.
Thank you. Commissioner Constantine?
Mary, just as one commissioner, but I don't want to, I think that others may agree with me, we want this an open process, and we want everybody to have their input. So we're going to take as long as it takes to do it right.
Absolutely,
all I'm
and that's
saying.
what we expect as well.
Commissioner Zimmer?
Along those same lines, I just want some clarification from Rebecca. When you said negotiate the DO, are you negotiating within our code or outside of our code?
Sometimes they propose things that are outside of the code, and that's why it's in the development order, and they will come to the board and ask for those particular waivers from the code. So it depends if staff agrees with them. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't, and sometimes that's why there's a different development order, or the applicant will come to you and say, we don't agree with this particular condition in the development order, can you remove this condition?
Sure. No, my question may be a little more narrower than that. When you made the statement, we negotiate with the developer,
Yes.
Staff is staying within the confines of the code, or they are not?
We are staying within the confines of the code. That's our basis, that's our template, but there are times that there may not be something addressed by the code. We may ask for something that's above and beyond the minimum code requirement, or there may be something that the developer's asking to do. Like, for instance, our code says you have to have, the maximum height for a wall is 6 foot 6 inches. So we may put in the DO that they can have an 8-foot wall. Or the code may not require a wall, but staff thinks it's appropriate to put a wall, so we'll put that as a condition in the development order.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And if I could, I just wanted to clarify for Mr. Sellery, if I could, because there seems to be a little bit, I think, of fear that this is the only opportunity for the land development code. So right now, the process that we're going through with the land development code was more of kind of a surgical, we had process. Originally, it started with the Open for Business Initiative land development code amendments, but it's gone on for so long now. So these were things that we recognized in the code as issues that needed to get addressed, but this isn't part of our our key strategic priorities plan. That's the next step. We're doing the visioning, we're doing the evaluation and appraisal report, we're doing the ear-based amendments, and then we are anticipating another round of land development code updates.
Thank you.
So I wasn't finished yet. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My observation in these matters, and I think when we get down to the crux of it, to Mr. Sellery's and Mr. Humphrey's point, is more of an as-built inspection. Most of the ones that I've run into in complaints are, this is what was approved, this is what was built, and they are not the same. And so when you go out there, and I've run into this when we have, again, other municipalities that back up to our unincorporated area and go pull the city's plans of what was supposed to be built and what the drainage was, to find out that nobody actually went out after the development was built to ensure that it was built the proper way. Now the water is draining towards the rear of the houses instead of towards the front, like the drainage plan indicated. And plants and trees and so forth were not kept as they were intended. So I don't know how we address that other than having a full inspection of some fashion from a staff member that goes out and takes what was approved, feet on the ground, eyes on the ground, and says, check, good, nope, this didn't happen, yep, this is good, nope, this didn't happen, so that we don't get way down the line of a development that is finished, occupied, and doesn't meet what the documents and intended them to be. Well, I don't think we need 5 people. I think we're development's waning here, so, but I would agree, we need some way to do it.
Anyone else? Commissioner Hara?
So I think there's, again, words are confusing for us. Final complete draft, it's still a draft. It's just coming through the drafting process, so no need to panic yet. I actually do have the 250 pages in my hands and have flipped through it already, and I can assure you I can get through it in time, because it's in red line form, so it's completely manageable. I just want to confirm with staff that the public input opportunities are all posted online. We've been transparent about the dates. Just a nod if you want to nod, because they're out there. I'm surprised you haven't seen them. You're
So,
saying
yes,
they're not out there?
We did send an email. I have not published the notice yet. We need 5 more people in in office, but the information will be published per our public notice process.
Okay, so we probably need to do that, and we need to publicize it on the website, because the fact that George doesn't know about it is alarming. Right? It's alarming, so we got to figure that out. I am aware of the issues that Joe referenced in the community that's in my district. I've been out there, I've toured it, and it is exactly as you described. What I see on paper and what I see that came out of the ground are two different things. Staff is engaged, we're trying to figure that out. That's all I got.
Commissioner Lockhart.
Yeah, so it's funny how all of these topics seem to go back to an earlier topic we were discussing.
Yep.
Thank you to Christina Brandolini, head of HR, for sending out the open positions report today, because there are 2 open inspector positions in development services right now.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Constantine? Then we need to move on.
To end on a good note, there is something that does affect all of us that's not in this county. It's on the other side of the econ, and I want to thank the Rebecca and her staff for putting out the comparisons, and want to ask that they continue to give us updates and engage with Orange County on the Sustany project. And so I just wanted to thank you very much for that as we move forward and continue the updates and engaging with Orange County. I think we all know our concerns. I don't have to articulate them right now, but thank you very much.
Commissioner Zimbow?
I will give you some good news on that, to a certain extent. If you're not aware, and fellow commissioners are not aware of it, there is no longer a proposal to run a road over the econ at that location or anywhere near that location, which has always been proposed for many, well,
bicycle and walk
the
path.
25 years I started fighting against that development.
Thank you.
It's off the table.
Shani, any more requests?
No, sir, no more speakers.
Anyone else in the audience would like to address the board at this time on any future agenda items that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.